there, this is Cassia.
And this is Brian.
Welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic.
Spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films, TV shows, and all other media.
This is where the fun begins. Alrighty, so you guys have been patient, and I've been really excited to tell you guys about the new co-host and introduce them to you. So it's going to be official, and this person has been a guest on the Ebon Hawk Podcast before, and I'm just so excited to have them on. They're such a big Star Wars fan. They're positive. They look at things in a very nuanced way. They really know KOTOR, and they really know movies. So why don't you introduce yourself, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm Brian. Very happy to be here. Definitely, like you said, I love Star Wars. Big KOTOR fan, big movie fan, and yeah, just super excited to be here. So a little bit about kind of my background as far as Star Wars goes. So I was born in 1981, so I was a little young to miss the original trilogy in all of its glory, but luckily I have, don't tell him I said this, but an older brother. He's 7 years older than me, so he was at that perfect age. So by the time I was old enough to, start playing with toys and things, I had all of his hand-me-down toys, and we get the movies and stuff. So I really grew up on it, largely thanks to him, just being old enough to have been into it. So it was always kind of a part of my childhood growing up. And then after the original trilogy was over, we didn't have a lot of Star Wars again then until the prequel trilogy came out. And that was kind of when I got to make Star Wars my own and really, sort of developed a little deeper understanding and, kind of more in tune with Star Wars. It was something I could call my own, not just something that I had to watch with my older brother and dad at home. So that was kind of how I got into Star Wars and growing up with it. Watched the prequel trilogy, and then started getting into doing a little bit of the collecting and things. And then when that ended, we had the hiatus again until Disney bought Lucasfilm, and we got a bunch more Star Wars. So every time we think that it's over, we keep getting a little bit more, and that's awesome. So that's kind of my base background with Star Wars. As far as Knights of the Old Republic goes, it's definitely a game that I love. I've played through the first KOTOR probably 5 or 6 times, and the second one a couple of times. I remember when it first came out, I was in college, so it was released in 2003, I believe, and I was going into my senior year in college, and I had a PlayStation, but not an Xbox, so it wasn't in the cards for me to get it, when it first came out, being a, starving college student. But when the second one came around, I was out of college and had a little bit of disposable income. So I, finally had the funds to get my Xbox and got the KOTOR 1 and 2 and played through both of them, and just have been in love with those ever since. So,
yeah. And
if you know me at all, you probably have seen me kind of poking around on Instagram. It's at astro_droid_. And I first got into the Star Wars Instagram community almost a year ago. Right now, we had just kind of started the lockdown, and I had gotten the Skywalker Saga, the big box set of the Blu-rays in 4K. And I wanted to put that on my Instagram, and I was like, people that I follow, friends and family would be like, oh, that's neat, but they wouldn't really care. I was like, I bet there's a bunch of Star Wars fans out there that would be really excited to see this. So I was like, I'm going to start this. I can, highlight some stuff I have in my collection. I really like Star Wars. I do Star Wars stuff every day, whether it's, reading a book or watching an episode of Clone Wars or, something silly that I'm doing, or just, a piece I have in my collection. So I was like, I'll just make this Star Wars account, and then I can just highlight whatever I have going on in my life that's related to Star Wars on that day. So that's kind of how I got it started. And like I said, that was just about a year ago, probably, sometime this, last couple of weeks. So
yeah. So
that's it. That's the brief history of me.
Yeah, so it'll be awesome to have you on, and it's gonna be great. I can already tell.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to say, so that was a little bit of the background on me. If you want to get some background on the Ebon Hawk Podcast, a really good place to do that is on Patreon. Cassia posts the scripts for the shows, a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff. We have some fun ideas in the works as far as doing some kind of Star Wars movie and TV show reviews, things like that, some special podcasts. So you would definitely want to check that out. You can find it. There's a link to it on our Instagram bio, which is at Ebon Hawk Podcast, or you can find it on patreon.com/Ebon Hawk Podcast.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So this will be fun. And we had some Patreon and listener questions to kind of introduce you to the greater galaxy, So
yeah.
The first one comes to us from Kai from Plex Armory. And he says, not including the Ebon Hawk, what is your favorite starship from KOTOR?
Okay, that's a good question. There's a lot of good Star Wars ships, and they're all really good. If I had to pick one from Knights of the Old Republic, I'm probably going to go with the Republic Hammerhead ship, which is what you're on to start the game, the Endar Spire. That's one of the Hammerhead ships, and we see a bunch of them, I think, at the end of the game when you're on the Starforge and there's the space battle going on. You see a lot of them out there. But my favorite one is actually at the beginning of Knights of the Old Republic 2, when you're on that mining planet, whatever it's called, and you end up going outside, and that's when the Harbinger pulls in, and you get to see it outside, and it looks really great, the way the graphics are on it, and I like that particular style of ship. Like I've always liked the Corellian Corvettes and stuff like that, more the troop transports. So Republic Hammerhead Cruiser is my answer to Kai.
Oh, nice. Mine is the Leviathan. I guess I love the plot reveal on that. Mm-hmm. So, and then this one comes to us from Minhas from Patreon. And he asks, what is your earliest memory of the franchise?
Okay, so like I mentioned in the intro, so I was born in 1981. So by the time I was old enough to start watching the films, I don't really remember a specific time. I do remember my mom worked at a dental office kind of around the block from our county public library, and you could go there and rent movies for free basically with your library card. So she would stop and get movies a couple of times a week. And I always remember being disappointed when it wasn't Star Wars. If she would tell me that it wasn't Star Wars, I'd be like, that's no good. I wasn't very happy about that. And then when the movie would start, if the 20th Century Fox logo would come up, I would hold my breath for a second, thinking that maybe she lied to me. She never did, but yeah. So that's kind of my earliest sort of formed memories about the Star Wars films and watching them growing up, was just seeing them on VHS, just at home with my family.
Yeah, I think my earliest memory of the franchise before I ever watched them was there was some toy with the Ewoks and stormtroopers, and I was like, teddy bears are fighting skeletons in a forest, and I was so confused. But yeah, then I eventually, discovered Star Wars, and here I am. Here we are.
Here we are. That's right.
Yeah. So, Stora's Thrifting Silver asks, what is your favorite Star Wars memory?
Okay, so I have a lot of good Star Wars memory, but probably my favorite one would be in relation to the special editions when those came out in '97. Just going to the theater to see those with my dad, because that wasn't an experience I'd had. I just only had ever seen them at home. Just like the commercial said, if you'd only ever seen them at home, you hadn't really ever seen them at all. And so those came out in '97. I would have been 15 at the time. So just spending that time with my dad, going out, we would go and get go to like the Chinese buffet in town and then go to the theater and see the movie. So that was just a really special time for us.
Yeah. I think my favorite one was skipping middle school to see Revenge of the Sith opening day. So
Okay.
it blew my mind. So
I may have skipped school to see episode 1, but I will not confirm nor deny that, just in case anyone's listening that doesn't need that information. So
yeah. So yeah, and then Plo Cool asks, "What are your favorite films and why?"
well, Plo Cool knows his movies, so hopefully he doesn't give me too much flack for mine. I have a few favorite movies. Generally, when I watch movies, I just try to find what I like in them. I don't sort of like rank them, but if I had to pick a couple, they're both going to be Steven Spielberg movies, and one's going to be Jurassic Park, and the other is going to be Jaws. Jurassic Park I like a lot. It's my favorite book. I was big into dinosaurs growing up, and I really like the kind of science gone amok sort of story. But what I really like with Jaws and just, any of Steven Spielberg's movies in general are that he can tell these big, huge, kind of sweeping stories, but they have sort of this nice nuance and just good characterizations and things like good lessons to learn in these, big backdrops of films that he puts together.
Yeah, Spielberg is a master at what he does. Those are great films, and I guess I always kind of like have a differentiation, which like favorite and best.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I consider like the best film that I like would be Casablanca. So yeah, Casablanca is my favorite movie that I consider like to be one of the best movies made, and I really enjoyed listening to your episode of Drink the Movies talking about Casablanca. It's just always nice to get a different perspective on a classic movie, black and white, just so many iconic lines, and yeah, such a great movie, just a perfect setup, and it even kind of inspired parts of Star Wars, like I think Jabba's palace to an extent, and originally I think Jabba was supposed to have a hat kind of like you see in Casablanca, and I'm like, that would have been, a bold artistic choice.
Yeah, that would have been good.
And then my favorite movie probably is Tron Legacy. It's just a unique, perfect soundtrack and just a different visual look to everything. And I think like movies, sometimes it's just nice to kind of like transport you to a new world and like a new story, and it was just an experience. I really enjoyed it. So
right. Yeah, for sure.
So let's take a quick break and we'll dive into these next few questions.
Sounds good.
All right, Respect Star Wars asks, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Yeah, so Star Wars has been one of those things that's just always been a part of my life. It's always been something that I've really liked and has resonated with me, from the films to the toys and the collectibles, things like that. I grew up with it, and then I had it sort of in my late high school into college years with the prequels, and now more recently with the sequels, and just getting to experience it and kind of the diversity of it, and just how it speaks to so many different people in so many different ways, I think is really neat. So if you ask 10 people who their favorite character in Star Wars is, you're very liable to get 10 different answers. And I think that that's really cool, how everyone can sort of can take something away from it, that speaks to them. And I think that that's really cool. And I just like, a community like that. I think that it's just inspiring and just fun to be a part of. So,
yeah, that's a great answer. And I think what it means to me is I like that Star Wars is a modern fairy tale kind of modern mythology, a hero's journey for modern audiences of all ages. So I guess that's what I would say it means to me. So
yeah, for sure.
Star Wars Doctrine asks, who is your favorite side character in Star Wars?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. Because there's a lot of really good ones. I don't know. I'm probably going to go with Admiral Akbar. Does that count as a side character?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, because he's leading the assault on the second Death Star. He was always there, you know, willing to go to battle for what he believed in, and for the Rebel Alliance. So yeah, Admiral Akbar. That's my favorite side character.
Yeah, like I don't know if R2D2 counts. I don't know. Is
Main character? No,
yeah,
narrator.
Yeah, I guess he is kind of like the main character of the whole saga, and so I'll say Commander Cody. When I was young, like even though all the clones look the same, I was like, I have a crush on Commander Cody, even though they all look the same. And like I always wanted to play him in Lego Star Wars, like be that character. But
Okay, you like the yellow, the paint scheme?
it's a good yellow white combination, and like he has fun interactions with Obi-Wan and Revenge of the Sith, and it'll be interesting to see if he ends up being in the Bad Batch. So,
yeah, we might get a lot more Cody here coming up in the next year or two. So,
definitely. So maybe even in Kenobi. So, the Force, we will see. Always in motion, the future is.
That's right.
And then Razagard asked, "What is your favorite character build / play style in Knights of the Old Republic?"
Okay, so when I'm doing my character creation, I almost always pick the scout, which I think is in the middle. There's one's like a brawler or a gunslinger or something, and then the other is like a thief class kind of a thing, right? Where they're sneaky.
Yeah.
I'll always play as the scout, just kind of the one in the middle. Now, if I could play really any video game without having to fight at all and could just get the story, I would totally do that all the time. So my most recent playthrough of Knights of the Old Republic, I had just picked it up on Steam when I got my new laptop, and I put the difficulty down on low because I was like, I don't want to be fighting all these people. Just want to do the story and the side missions and stuff. So yeah, I was just kind of play it down the middle, and we'll try to avoid conflict as much as possible.
Yeah, I was very intentional when I played Knights of the Old Republic 2, and I was like, I'm gonna like get a whole lot of persuasion points and a whole lot of droid points, because I'm like, I can be good with the Force, you know, but like if I can kind of like persuade people, but also be able to repair droids, like for when like I can't mess with people, you know, I can at least mess with machines. And it's like in Star Wars, like if you have the Force persuasion and you kind of know how to do droids, like it kind of is a good experience. With Knights of the Old Republic, I would usually always be the scout too, and kind of like be a consular, or I would really be any of the Jedi classes, like consular, guardian, or sentinel, but I think I have the best experiences being a sentinel or a consular. So
yep,
that's how I play it. But like the cool thing is you can do whatever you want, and there's always fun things to discover there.
That's right. Yeah, and if you can do the man or the woman, and then the story will change. You know, kind of depending in how you play. So especially for the time, that was really great. So I'm meaning to go back and do another playthrough, just doing some different choices, just so I can explore a little bit more of that. So
yeah, it's definitely fun to explore. Speaking of both games, Ironic Designs asks, which game did you enjoy more, KOTOR 1 or KOTOR 2?
KOTOR 1 is probably my favorite of the two games. KOTOR 2 is good. The graphics were good. I don't know why they changed the layout of the control scheme on it. but that's okay. Yeah, I think KOTOR 1, it has just, the characters are a little bit more interesting, I think, and just the way that the story is told is more interesting, and it's sort of all contained within the one game. So I think KOTOR 1 gets my vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think I prefer KOTOR 1 as well. I think it's kind of like the kind of fun swashbuckling adventure, but still has a lot of good depth. But I think KOTOR 2 makes me think a lot more. Because Kreia just has the dialogue just like really kind of hits on like, I think, all the philosophy you could really ever think about. And it's like, oh my goodness, like, what do I think about that? What is right? Like, and I would just love to like be in Star Wars and take a philosophy class from Kreia, you know? It would just blow my mind. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that would be good to do that. What else would be good is if you're listening at home, if you are checking us out on Apple Podcasts, it would be really great if you could review us and subscribe and share our podcast with, other people that you think would like listen to the Ebon Hawk, like Knights of the Old Republic, like Star Wars and Star Wars news. We would really appreciate that because, sharing it and liking it and leaving reviews, all that stuff really helps get the Ebon Hawk out there. So we'd appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. So to finish off this intro episode, I had a few questions, and
okay.
So
is this like the formal interview now?
The formal interview.
These are your questions.
Depending on the answers, you may no, just kidding. You're good, but yeah, but which aspect? One thing I was wondering is which aspect of adapting KOTOR cinematically has this podcast not tackled that you would like it to cover?
So there's a lot of we still have the better part of 2 films to get through, but I think one of the areas that we haven't gotten into too much, especially relevant with the Snyder Cut coming out this week, is just sort of what, maybe not specifically what directors, but what type of directors and what sort of movie genres that we would like to pull from, and start imagining kind of what we would like to see visually on the screen for some of these places and specific scenes and things like that, to maybe just get into a little bit more of the way that the film's not going to look as a whole, but kind of look more under focus, I think would be sort of interesting to get into.
Yeah, I loved growing up with the visual dictionaries of the prequels. I had the first and episode 3. For some reason, I don't know if I had episode 2, but just imagining that for the KOTOR universe and like getting all the names for all the random like side people, and just like being like, and this is an energy container. Like, oh, that would just make my life like.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And just one thing I was wondering is, how did you discover this podcast?
So somewhere along the line, after I had started my Instagram page, I saw Ebon Hawk Podcast. I don't remember if it was like in a suggested account to follow, or if we just happened to be liking the same things, and I saw your name pop up, and I was like, Ebon Hawk Podcast. I was like, that's got to be Knights of the Old Republic something. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it was. And I was like, okay, I like Knights of the Old Republic. I'm going to give this a listen. So I started listening. Followed you on Instagram, started interacting with you guys on there, and when you do your fan cast and just ask questions and just try to interact and be positive on there, as much as I could, and I really enjoyed the podcast. So I've been a faithful listener ever since then. So pretty much, I think, probably close to the start of when you had first started doing your episodes, I think.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you started listening. Like, you've always been a positive force in the fandom, and always like giving us a lot of encouragement. So yeah. And then one thing I was wondering is, who do you think has the best character arc in KOTOR?
Oh, well, that depends on which day you ask me for sure. But if I had to pick one, I would say in game it's probably Bastila, just to kind of go through her and see her struggles and dealing with the Jedi Council, and then ultimately falling, and then however the game ends. If you want to look before the game, I think Jolie's character arc is really interesting, and how he ended up where he ended up, and maybe that could be something we'll talk about in a future show, like next week.
Definitely,
but,
yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as in the game, I think Bastila character arc is really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think Bastila has the most interesting arc. I mean, Revan is cool, but I feel like Bastila really makes the biggest decisions with the biggest impact on like kind of the whole universe of KOTOR, like by sparing Revan and then kind of like falling to the dark side. Like she has a lot to deal with, and I'm like, oh, this is just so interesting. And I think if they do it right, like it would be really fascinating to watch. So
yeah, it would be a great story to watch unfold.
Yeah.
In a film for sure.
Yeah. And then who did you think had the best character arc in Knights of the Old Republic 2?
Probably Kreia, right? Especially she's very mysterious and just interesting. You don't ever really know where her sort of alliance lies, and I think characters like that just in general are kind of interesting. So I would say Kreia, Darth Treya.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like I would want to see kind of like Kreia's like whole backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think they held back a little bit in Knights of the Old Republic 2, and I kind of would have liked to have a bit more answers and a little bit less mystery to kind of understand like some of what happened.
Right.
Like very interesting, but I would say maybe Visas Mar. I think she kind of goes through like her planet's destroyed. She becomes like a Sith apprentice, basically a slave to Darth Nihilus, and then she ends up becoming like one of the most loyal followers to the Jedi Exile. And I'm like, wow, like that has a lot of there's just a whole lot going on there, and it'd be cool to see that kind of realized and fleshed out. So that's what I would say,
Yeah, I would be interested if we ever end up getting remakes of these first two games, if they would, if they do redo parts of the game, if they would try to flesh out the characters a little bit more in Knights of the Old Republic too, because some of those storylines just didn't get enough attention that
Definitely
they should have.
Yeah, I would like that. I mean, it is kind of unique with the way that the exile's influence works on the companions. Sometimes that kind of really affects their stories, and it would just be kind of interesting to see that story told in a different medium. Like, how much is the exile? How much of a say do they have on their stories? So it's just like sometimes it's a lot to think about. I'm like, what? Do they have free will? Like, how much free will? And like, yeah. But I guess I don't know. I just think about those things, and like, just running a KOTOR podcast, so.
Right.
Yeah. And then is there a scene you would most like to see adapted in the KOTOR story?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great scenes. When we started talking about doing a KOTOR film adaptation, I almost just always sort of picture how the film would begin. So just from the time that your character kind of wakes up in the Endar Spire to getting off of the Endar Spire, I kind of run through my head. a lot. So I think that that's the one I would like to see sort of fleshed out the most, because it's the one that I personally just kind of think about when I start thinking about how would a movie about this video game work, and it's how to get the story started. So
Yeah, I think for me, it would be cool to start a third movie with a flashback of Bastila leading the Jedi Strike team. So
mm-hmm.
then it's kind of confirmed what Malik and Bastila say. Like, and you kind of see Revan be betrayed by Malik, and you see Bastila spare Revan. I
Mm-hmm.
just think it would be a cool action scene to kind of start off a third movie, kind of start off a little bit different.
Right.
Star Wars doesn't really do flashbacks that much, but I think that's why it would make kind of a good impact. But it's the purpose of it isn't just to like flashback, it's to kind of confirm what's been told. And
Right. Sure.
you really see the formation of the Force bond there. And I think it would show that Bastila is conflicted. Like, in my mind, I would want Bastila just to fall to the dark side in the second movie, like second
Mm-hmm.
end of the second movie. Once she's not going to be in the best headspace, like after Revan finds out who he is, and then in my mind, like Bastila tries to win by any means necessary when she stays behind, and then
Mm-hmm.
I think that would kind of make her fall to the dark side, and then she kind of realizes like she's kind of been really used by the Jedi Council and kind of held back, and she's kind of been forced to lie to Revan,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm like, she's fallen to the dark side. Like, she's not in a good place. Like,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
needs
She's not.
therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. Not in a good place at all, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm like, if the Force bond, if the relationship, like, if you kind of want to show like where everyone is, I think it's good to kind of like start a third movie showing that scene, and like kind of showing like maybe you could show like Bastila's in space kind of like trying to meditate, and then it's like she's kind of flashing back to that, and like I kind of think like the Force bond wouldn't really be like in working order. I think once Revan kind of realizes like he's been lied to about his identity, he would kind of
Mm-hmm.
have to work through that, and then I think the Force bond would be there when he is ready to reach out again, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's how I kind of imagine it. And yeah, it's like the third movie and second movie in my mind, like kind of the beats were the easiest to find, but for me, I struggled the most with kind of plotting out the first one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The first one would be the challenge to get everything set up to go, for sure, I think.
yeah. But which character would you be most interested to see in a movie?
I don't know. It's easy to say Revan, right? Everyone's wanted to see Revan on the big screen for since 2003, basically. I don't know. I think that, like I said, Bastila is probably my favorite of the character arcs in the first one. I think seeing her on screen and kind of, if they're able to kind of capture the emotion and sort of her, sort of fall and kind of spiral down into her descent, I think would be really interesting. So, so probably Revan, but then probably also Bastila.
Yeah, for me, it would be like I love the trio of
Mm-hmm.
Revan, Karth, Bastila. It would just be nice to kind of see them interact.
Right.
But then I'm also like, kind of all of the characters, it would be cool to see. But I think if I had to choose one, I would be like, I can't choose one. I'm bad at choosing. So Revan and Bastila. So
Right.
that's how I roll. Like, whenever I have to come up with lists, I'm like, okay, top 3 or top 5, and it's like top 1. It's like, okay, here's 3, you know?
Yeah, but then also T3M4 because Star Wars droids are the best on screen. So he
Yeah.
would be amazing too. So
Ye old Astro Droid, like,
that's right. See?
I mean, I just did an episode on Funko Pops, and I'm like, I want the T3M4 Funko Pop,
Yeah.
I think everyone loves, like, HK47, but I'm like, but T3 is just a loving,
Yeah.
like, Astro Droid,
He,
and
he just rolls around, tries to be helpful, fixes the Ebon Hawk. He can do it all. So
yeah, and then I think for KOTOR 2, I'm just kind of thinking, like, it would be cool to see Atten Rand and Bao Dur. I just think they have good designs, but, like, basically, they could call Knights of the Old Republic to Kreia a Star Wars story. And one actress I had in mind for Kreia is Dimple Kapadia. She was in Tenet as Priya. So, astute listeners, you can remember that when we do fan casts. But
yeah, there you go.
I just kind of had her in mind, and I'm like, basically, this is your Oscar-winning role, But yeah, Kreia is just amazing. And then this is unscripted, but
oh, okay.
If I'm going to say 2 words, and then you're going to tell me what comes to mind when I say them. So
okay.
Here it is. Hero's Journey.
Joseph Campbell.
All right. So you passed the secret test of character. So
okay, good.
Yeah. And should there be a hallway scene in KOTOR? And who would have the hallway scene, and when would you have it take place?
I think that, yes, there should be a hallway scene, because hallway scenes are always good. And I actually think that I would like to see Bastila doing the hallway scene on Rakata. So if you've not played the game, we gave you the spoiler warning, but when Bastila is Darkside Bastila, you meet her on the roof, but I think you could easily introduce that into a hallway scene. You're going through that temple, there are all of the sort of those security droids there. I could totally see her, running down the hallway, tearing up a bunch of those droids, chasing you up onto the roof of this temple.
Yeah, that's
and I think that would be super cool. So
yeah, that's a great idea. Sometimes I'm a little bit wary of hallway scenes, but then I was thinking about it, and I do like your idea. Like, it would be nice to see, like, Bastila kind of just be brutal, and just, like, no holds barred. Or is it no bars hold? I don't know. It's one of the things.
it's one of those.
Yeah, things happen, but I do like that, because I think it would just kind of take everyone by surprise. They're like, because I feel like Revan, Jolie, and Juhani would not be playing to win that duel. They're trying to really reach out to her. But, like, Bastila, like, I think she would kind of see Jolie and Juhani kind of as slaves to the Jedi.
Right.
And it's like, they screwed you over. Like, why aren't you on my team? And I think she'd be kind of hurt by Revan, like, canonically kind of turning her down. And, like,
right.
It's just kind of like, well, I guess I'm going to be, awesome. I'm going to be a Sith. And, like, I don't care if you, like, live or die in this situation necessarily. Look at how powerful I am, But I was kind of thinking a good time for a hallway scene, like, to tell a story visually, is when you're on Terrace. I would have it be Bastila, like, when you're able to, like, see her with a lightsaber for the first time.
Oh, okay.
Because I kind of was imagining it, like, it's like, she's like, maybe it's like, oh no, there's too many of them, what are we gonna do? And it's like, she's a Jedi, she's kind of like Anakin Skywalker in Clone Wars, and it's like, I'm Bastila Shan, like,
right,
like,
yeah,
and kind of like, visually, you're kind of showing, like, she knows what she's doing, she's headstrong, and, like, this is what you have to look forward to now. Like, this is Star Wars. There's lightsabers. Like, this is the world of adventure coming for you, you know? And
Right.
then I was also kind of thinking, like, right before the Leviathan, like, I imagine, like, Revan and Bastila are pretty strong Jedi at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been on a journey for a long time. Like, they're close, but it's right before the Leviathan, before you kind of realize, like, oh, there's problems, you know? Like, he doesn't know who he is, you know? But, like, kind of just to show, like, the bond and they're in sync, you know? It's like this is nothing for them, like, being on Manon and, like, kind of going through a lot of things, like, and visually what you're showing is, like, Revan's powerful, Bastila's powerful. They have a force dyad going on, or force bond. We can call them both, I guess, but
it would be interesting to see Bastila do it maybe earlier in the film to sort of give you some foreshadowing into her descent, because the mad Sith or Jedi in the hallway is usually a dark side sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you could see like a glimpse of her doing that earlier, and then maybe again later at Rakata after she's, you know, completely fallen, you know, something like that, that would be pretty cool. So
yeah, and I mean that would just kind of show, like, they're powerful, but sometimes, like, ultimate power isn't always, like, the best thing, you know, for like the force of it all. Because I'm like, those scenes are cool, but sometimes I think, like, you kind of miss the point of the force. It's like, it's supposed to be used for knowledge and balance, like, never for attack. And, like, sometimes if we, like, kind of just are like, hallway scene, woo woo woo, you know, like, sometimes you miss, like, the point. And I'm like, so it's like, hallway scenes are good, but I kind of just hope they're kind of used intentionally to like kind of visually tell that story. And, like, I wouldn't necessarily want it in the third movie when, like, Revan knows who he is on the Starforge. I'd be like, oh, that's the worst time I think you could have one. But yeah, but I mean, if someone else was in charge, they're like, I have a brilliant idea. What if Revan has a hallway scene on the Starforge? And I'd be like, oh no, no, please no. But yeah. And then I did mention your podcast, Drink the Movies. If there was a drink for Knights of the Old Republic, what do you think it would be?
Okay. So I have a podcast called Drink the Movies, where we do a cocktail and a movie review each week. So I thought about this one a little bit. So when you're on Terrace, I think they get drunk on like Teresian ale or something, right? The Sith kids. So you could definitely have some Teresian ale. Well, you can't anymore because Terrace is no more. But I think what they probably are drinking in universe. I was thinking about this a little bit. So you have to picture this. So you have Saul on the Leviathan, right? He's fallen to the dark side, or he's working for the Sith now, but he's living a life of luxury. So he's probably gotten himself some good Corellian brandy. So he's probably made like a brandy old fashioned, and he's just sitting on the command deck of the Leviathan, just looking down at everything he's in charge of now. Thinking back to how he screwed over his buddy Canderous. His Karth, and having himself some Corellian brandy old fashioned. That's what I think you're drinking in Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for a future episode, I'm just gonna have you be like, what character, like, what drink reminds you of this character, and be like, that would be a fun episode, I think.
Yeah, you can always get your blue milk on Tatooine, right? So
yeah. That would actually be funny, like, if, like, canonically in Knights of the Old Republic they are drinking blue milk on Tatooine, but maybe they could, like, see the crate dragon, and they're just sipping, like, okay, let's do this. Throw down the blue milk.
They slam their cups down and they go deal with the crate dragon. That's right.
Yeah. And then what question should I have asked that you wanted me to ask?
Oh. I don't know. Everyone asked a lot of good questions, and I think we got sort of a good kind of just general background on, well, you too, because you answered all of these with me, which is awesome. Just a background on that, but I guess what do we think is next up? So we're gonna go into Kashyyyk. We're gonna talk about Jolie. So yeah, I don't know. I think we covered pretty much all the bases. I think we got a good little intro episode for everyone here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you aboard as a co-host on the Ebon Hawk podcast. And like you said, we're gonna cover Kashyyyk, kind of talk about kind of what genres, like what movies, what directors would kind of inspire, like the first iteration of a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy or show, or whatever, and then just kind of like covering the second and third movies. And once we kind of get through that, we could maybe like dive into KOTOR 2 or talk about the comics, or like
yeah, we have comics, we have books, we have a bunch more merchandise coming out for Knights of the Old Republic. So really the galaxy is open to a lot of really fun and exciting shows, I think.
Yeah. So, and if anything, even with the High Republic, I think that's giving a lot of Knights of the Old Republic Easter eggs, and I kind of think it's good to have a Star Wars story outside of the Skywalker saga before there's a Knights of the Old Republic, because I think that would just maybe be a little bit too big of a jump, at first.
Yep.
You kind of want someone else to be without the Skywalker saga at first, and then you can kind of do like your own thing after the first has been done. But
yeah, I think especially if the goal is to keep everything canonized and everything making sense together, that you sort of have to do sort of an in-between step, because you can't leave too much space out there just to fill in, right? So
definitely. So sky's the limit. Well, actually, space is the limit. Time, the galaxy is the limit. So
yeah,
there's this episode, and you can find us on Instagram at the Ebon Hawk Podcast.
And if you'd like to connect with me, I'm on Instagram. It's at astro_droid_. And if you want to check out our Patreon, the link's going to be in our Instagram bio, or you can find it at www.patreon.com/Ebon Hawk Podcast. The Ebon Hawk Podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, shares, they all help us out a lot, so we really appreciate those. Our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Shorman at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/alistairsounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com.
This episode of the Ebon Hawk Podcast has been brought to you by Nikki Dog from Patreon. May the Force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.